Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi Lulla here with you on the Pillar Exterior stage. DB will be joining me here in a little bit. He's on dad duty this morning, so he will be joining me here shortly. In the meantime, though, I'm going to actually get a lineup out to you this morning. Coming up at 8 o'clock, we've got Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. 8:30, we've got Andy Kendeigh from KETV, and at 9 o'clock, Mitch Sherman from The Athletic to get things going for you here on this Wednesday. A lot going on in the sports world. Obviously, you've got the whole Nebraska of it all. Early this morning, though, a little bit of breaking news. The Kansas City Chiefs are finalizing a deal that will bring DeAndre Hopkins to them from Tennessee after all their wide receiver injuries and issues they've had there. I talked to DB about it yesterday on the show, and I still said the Kansas City Chiefs scared me more than just about any team in the league, despite the fact that offensively it's looked pretty mediocre at times and that Patrick Mahomes has, leads the league in interceptions and whatever else, right? But you look at a team that defensively is better than they've ever been and their quarterback is still Patrick Mahomes. That's terrifying to me. And then they bring him a little bit of help. And I understand DeAndre Hopkins isn't, Houston DeAndre Hopkins anymore. He's a little bit older, and I think he's 32, if I remember correctly. But this is a guy that, last year he still had a 1,000-yard season with Tennessee. After being banged up for a couple years, his last couple years in Arizona, had 1,000 yards, had 9 touchdowns for Tennessee last year. It's not like their quarterback situation has been ideal either. So, this is I think a really good pickup for Kansas City, and only further terrifies me with that team.
Touchdown, Kansas City!
Yeah, Mitch Holthus might be yelling that a little bit more frequently through the course of the rest of the season here, but that's the latest. It's a conditional 4th-round pick that the Chiefs are giving up. It's a 5th-rounder that can convert to a 4th-rounder based on some stipulations that I haven't seen quite yet this morning. But that's a pretty big deal for Kansas City as they acquire some help for Patrick Mahomes, and hope for their sake, hopefully they get some guys healthy as well. As a 49ers fan, I'm not too sympathetic towards their health situation, as the 49ers are kind of turning into a MASH unit. But that's the latest on the Kansas City DeAndre Hopkins situation. I know everybody is probably tuning in because the whole Marcus Satterfield thing. Hopefully you tune in every day, but
Everybody.
There's obviously Marcus Satterfield had his press conference clip go a little bit viral nationally yesterday. And here's the here's the funny thing about this. And I know people are going to paint me as a Satterfield honk or a homer, or whatever you want to call it. The 4 to 6 yards per play thing is not even the thing that would even concern me the most from that press conference. Shane, you don't happen to have that clip, do you?
Looking to see if I have it.
Okay, great. Let me know if you do. But basically, Marcus Satterfield was asked what a good point yards per play would be during his press conference yesterday. And he says, basically, nationally, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I'd like to be between 4 and 6. And then people then looked up what 4 yards per play or 6 yards per play would get you in the country. 4 yards per play get you basically the bottom of the country. You're talking about last, second to last, somewhere in there. 6 yards per play gets you middle of the pack, somewhere between 50 and 60th in the country. And he admits, he goes, hey, I don't know nationally what leads the country. And then the person who asked the question, I'm not sure who it was. I heard it was Sam, but I'm not positive on that. Sam McEwen. But They go, hey, you guys are at 5.5 right now, 5.5 yards per carry or yards per play right now. That's why I asked. And Marcus Satterfield then follows it up with, I don't know what's leading the country, but I want it to be a little more than it is right now. Basically saying, hey, we need to improve on that 5.5. Here's how I took that. And listen, we say this all the time on the show. A couple of things can be true at the same time. So let me start with this. Has the offense not been good enough? Absolutely. Has it been particularly bad the last few games? 100%. It was obviously the worst against Indiana. Rutgers, I'm not trying to make excuses here. I don't know what to do with Rutgers because of the wind conditions. I really don't. Right? Should they have committed to the run a little bit more and made that thing a little bit less of a factor in terms of the weather conditions? Maybe, sure, if you want to throw that out there. I don't know what to do with the Rutgers game, but let's throw it in there as a bad offensive performance because the numbers were bad, right? We can take the context out of it for the sake of this conversation. Purdue for 3 quarters, not good offensively, right? I actually think they were pretty good offensively against Illinois before that. They had opportunities. I mean, again, and I know it's more than a couple plays per game.
I have it queued up.
Okay, give me just a second here. I know it's more than a couple plays per game, but if you look at Illinois, you've got an easy touchdown pass to Lindenmeyer, which was a beautiful play design and a beautiful play call at that time that Dylan Raiola just misses. And you have a 50-50 touchdown to Isaiah Nayor in the end zone that gets called a touchdown and then gets reversed. All right? If we're talking about 38 points against Illinois versus 24 points against Illinois, nobody cares about that as a bad offensive performance. I don't even think it was a bad offensive performance. I think it was pretty good against a pretty good team, and you had a couple of plays go the other way that make it look not as good. I still don't think it was bad. But let's take the last 3 games as poor offensive performances. Nobody's denying that. That's just out there, right? Now, I would like to have a more in-depth conversation about where the blame lies for those things, which is why something else Marcus Satterfield said yesterday actually concerns me more than the 4 to 6 yards per play. But Shane, let's hear that clip.
Marcus, as a play caller, what's that target number for yards per play that you would aim for? That's within reason.
That's a good play. Or that's between 4 and 6. I don't know what. I honestly don't even know what leads the country in yards per play. What would be a top yards per play?
You guys are at 5.5 right now. That's why I asked.
Yeah, it's a great question. You stopped me. I don't want to lie to you. I don't know what's leading the country, but I want it to be a little bit more than what it is now, for sure.
So that's the quote. That's the thing that people are losing their minds about. For what it's worth, and this is really neither here nor there, I'm not sure that whoever asked the question, again, I was told it was Sam. I can't really, it doesn't sound like him at the beginning of the clip. It kind of does at the end of the clip. I don't think they knew what the national leaders in yards per play were either. I think they knew what Nebraska's was, but when Satterfield asks him, hey, what are the national leaders, they don't give him an answer. So we want to be all over Satterfield, and I get his job is different than a journalist's job, but, if you're asking the question, that seems like something maybe you have off the top of your head. I don't know. But, again, that's neither here nor there. What I hear when he gives that answer isn't, we want to be somewhere between second to last and 50th in the country in yards per play. That's not what I hear. I understand that's what those numbers specifically mean, but what I hear is we need to do a better job of staying on schedule. Right? How often do you hear Coach Rule talk about this? I don't know that they think about things in terms of yards per play and on a national average. That I don't think they do, and I don't know why they would. Right? The way I think they think about it, based on what Coach Rule says all the time, is, hey, we need to be in 2nd and 4 instead of 2nd and 7. We need to be in 3rd and 2 instead of 3rd and 4, right? I hear him talking about staying on schedule. That's what he cares about as a play caller in terms of his yards per play, not where they rank nationally, right? Because that is the thing that actually affects the way he will call the game moving forward. Is, hey, did we stay on schedule? Did we keep ourselves in manageable positions on 2nd and 3rd down? That's what I hear. What I hear is, hey, if we're between 2nd and 4 and 2nd and 6, and then we're between either a first down and 3rd and 2, after that, we're going to be successful a lot of the time. That's staying on schedule for us. Now, I don't know where people read into this. I mean, I listened to this thing a couple times because I saw all sorts of consternation about, like, does he not want to have any explosive plays? Do we not understand what an average is, people? Averages include both the long plays and the short plays if you're talking about yards per play. I don't know where people got that. Maybe, again, that's a minority that I'm seeing in mentions, and because I spend too much time on the internet for this job, I don't know. But I don't know where people got the, well, does he not think about explosive plays and whatever else? All I hear when he says this is, hey, we need to do a better job of staying on schedule. That's what I hear. If you hear something other than that, that's fine. You probably have an already tainted view of Marcus Satterfield, and I'm not even saying you're wrong. I just don't understand why people are freaking out over this particular thing. The thing that honestly concerned me more was his conversation on the run game, because somebody asked him, like, hey, like, what do we need to do to get the run game more consistently? And he took responsibility for that. That, to me, was the more concerning quote. And Shane, I don't know if you can cue that one up when you get a chance here.
I have it. You want it?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a lot on me. I have to commit to it. I think that I've gotten, like, we're really good getting the ball to Ja'Cory and the receivers and reverses and perimeter and all that stuff, which is weird because our perimeter blocking, but that's been one of our strong things this year is our perimeter runs. I've got to make sure I get in the mindset of you have to, in order to win in this league, establish the run game. And so, through the bye week and through this past week, I think that, we're going to work towards getting back to that for sure.
That, to me, is the more concerning quote from the press conference. If you want to be concerned about something, is like how often, again, going to what Coach Rule says and being on the same page as the head coach and the offensive coordinator / play caller, is this is something Coach Rule has been talking about incessantly, nonstop. Hey, we need to be a run-first football team. We want a power run football team. We want to be able to establish the run. All of these things, right? And the fact that Marcus Satterfield feels like he has to get back into the mindset of being able to do that and that he has to commit to it better, that to me is more concerning than the 4 to 6 yards per play, honestly. Because it feels like there might be a bit of a disconnect between, and this is the thing we talked about a little bit yesterday, identity. The identity that the head coach wants for the team, the identity that the play caller is establishing for the team. And that would make a lot of sense why things have looked disjointed so far with the offense, at least through the last few games. Now, people have been going back and doing kind of a revisionist history thing of, well, I thought they kind of looked disjointed even when they're putting up points against, Colorado and UTEP and whoever else, right? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick with the last 3 games because I think that's where it's been bad. Purdue, Rutgers with the wind, and then obviously Indiana, right? I don't want to go back and go say, oh, well, because then we get back into, well, what about the penalties in the second half against Colorado? And what about taking the foot off the gas against UTEP and whatever, right? I don't want to go back to those other games because I don't think they're relevant to this conversation. What I do think is relevant is the fact that there does seem to be a little bit of an identity crisis with Nebraska's offense. That's the thing that's concerning to me. And I don't think, again, we're going to hear Marcus Satterfield honk here. I don't think it's entirely on Marcus Satterfield. I talked about this a couple days ago. If we want to have a discussion about the offense, let's have a discussion about the offense. But let's not pretend that Marcus Satterfield is not only just the only coach on the offense, he's not even the only offensive coordinator on the offense. I like Glenn Thomas as much as anybody, right? Glenn Thomas is co-offensive coordinator. I get he doesn't call the plays. But if we've got issues with the offense, the next person you should probably look to is the co-offensive coordinator. That's a guy that obviously has a lot of say, or should theoretically has a lot of say in what's happening offensively. And then let's look at the wide receivers. I don't think the wide receivers have played up to par for what we think their talent level is. I think Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair are talented guys. I don't think they've played up to their talent level. And they certainly haven't done some of the other things, going back to perimeter blocking, that Nebraska needs to do to execute some of these things that Satterfield's calling. But I do think there is a little bit of an identity crisis on offense because you look at the wide receivers and you go, okay, these are the guys we think give us the best opportunity to make plays. Those are not the guys, I don't think, that give us the best opportunity to run the football well, right? So you want to be explosive offensively. You also want to be a power run team. Some of the people on the offense, some of the personnel on the offense don't do both well, I don't think, right? So that's where your conflict starts to come in. But then, let's go even further. Your best player on your team, certainly on the offense, is a 5-star quarterback who is not a run threat. Now, we can get into Dylan and why he hasn't been running because we also conveniently forget that he was taken off a little bit more early in the season. That's a different discussion for a different segment. But you've got a quarterback who is a pass-first and at this point, pass-only quarterback. So you've got your best player on offense is a quarterback who throws the ball. So there's a conflict. Your offensive line is better at pass blocking than run blocking. I don't know if that's a mindset. I don't know if that's schematic. I don't know what that is. But they've been better at pass blocking than run blocking this year. DB says if you can pass block, you can run block. I believe him. But so far, they've been better in pass pro than they have in run blocking. So you've got an offensive line that's more comfortable, apparently, in pass pro. You've got a quarterback who is a throw-first, at this point, throw-only quarterback. And then you've got receivers that can do one or the other, but seemingly not both well at the same time. So that's where the identity crisis comes in here. It's not the 4 to 6 yards per play. I don't care about that almost at all. What I care about is unless you're not, at this point at Nebraska, you don't have the weapons or the personnel to be like, hey, we can be good at everything all the time. This goes back to what DB said on Monday, right? Maybe they need to pare down a little bit the things they're focusing on so they can get the personnel packages right, the guys that are best at those things. Maybe they need to figure out, hey, this is our bread and butter. These are the things that, like, instead of being a jack of all trades, master of none, let's just really nail down on 3, 4, 5 concepts that we feel really good about that someone on our team can execute at a high level. I don't care if it's Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair or if it's Jalen Lloyd and Alex Bullock. I don't care who it is. Let's nail down to a handful of concepts that someone on our team, some group of players on our team can execute at a high level consistently. That, to me, is the bigger concern with the offense. Not that the offensive coordinator doesn't know off the top of the head how many yards per play is leading the country. I don't really think that matters. What I do think matters is staying on schedule, which is a hell of a lot easier to do if you know what your identity is offensively. To me, that is the bigger concern. To me, though, that's also a fixable issue. I think it's fixable in season. I don't think you have to wait to the off season. I don't think you have to wait until you get a new crop of players or whatever. I think you can fix that in season because I think the guys that are able to execute that core group of whatever you want your identity to be offensively, I think they exist. I just don't think you have guys that can do all things at all times. Isaiah Nair and Alex Bullock have different skill sets, right? Dante Dowdell and Ramir Johnson have different skill sets. Even certain guys on the offensive line have different skill sets. Although it's kind of funny, everybody, and maybe it's a position move thing, everybody was talking about Micah Mazuka and the reason that Nebraska hadn't been able to run the ball is because he was out of there. When he goes and plays left tackle, he's got a stellar pass pro grade from PFF, and his run blocking grade was dreadful. Even the guy that we think is the nastiness, the run blocking heart of that offensive line, better at pass pro than he is at run game. Right? So I don't know if that's, again, with the offensive linemen. Hey, let's find that group of guys that run blocks really, really well together. Or maybe it's just a reps thing. Right? Maybe it's just hey, we aren't repping our pet plays in the run game enough for these guys to get comfortable. Because that would make sense to me, too. If I see these guys like, hey, they're actually really good at pass pro. I think pass pro is harder than run blocking. Not that run blocking is easy. I don't want Vers to come at me on Friday. Not that run blocking is easy. But Vers will tell you offensive linemen like run blocking more. Almost across the board, almost universally. Talk to any, I'm sure TK is in the chat at this point. Talk to any offensive lineman, they want to run the ball. They want to run block. So if they're struggling in run blocking versus pass pro, to me, that's probably a reps issue versus a talent or ability issue. Pass pro is harder because it's a passive action. Most of these guys are aggressive and they want to be aggressive. So maybe it's a reps thing. Maybe it's, hey, let's get down to these concepts so our offensive linemen can get better at these concepts. So our running backs can know where the holes and where the cutbacks and where these things are going to be in those concepts. And if that's the thing you want to throw at Marcus Satterfield, I'll listen, right? I'm here to listen to that because I think that's a fair criticism that they haven't been able to nail down an identity, that they've tried to do too much too soon with guys that can't do it all. Maybe they thought they could, right? But I don't think they can. I don't believe that 46 yards per play has anything to do with any of that. What I believe is the fair criticism of Marcus Satterfield is identity-based and trying to do too much too soon within this group of guys.
It was a bloody Tuesday.
Those are the criticisms I think are fair of Marcus Satterfield, and I'll listen to that. I really will. But if all you have is, if we're at 4 to 6 yards per play, we're one of the worst offenses in the country, you can miss me with that. All I hear him talking about there is staying on schedule, which is important. Coach Rhule's been talking about it ad nauseum. Talks about it all the time. He doesn't put a number on it in yards per play, but he puts a number on it with, hey, we want to be in 2nd and 4 or 5 instead of 2nd and 7 and 8. We want to be in 3rd and 1 and 2 instead of 3rd and 5 and 6. Talks about that all the time. It's the exact thing Marcus Satterfield was talking about, in my opinion. And because he didn't know what yards per play were to lead the country, I don't think that's the way that they measure themselves. I think they measure themselves by staying on schedule. We'll talk about this more. We'll talk about, obviously, Marcus Satterfield stuff. We'll get DB's thoughts on it as he joins us here in a few minutes. We've got lots of National Football League, National College Football to get to as well. I'm Ravi Lulla. We will be back here with more Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're also live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Welcome back. Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube as well. DB will be joining me here shortly in just a little bit. But if you want to join the show, you can give us a call, 888-638-4876. Or if you want to join the show a week from Friday, you can do so right here live at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We'll be back with another live show and breakfast. That's the Friday before the UCLA game. That game is on November 2nd, so the November 1st is that Friday, I believe, if my dates are right off the top of my head. You can join us here. Make sure you go to eventbrite.com and search for Hurrdat Sports Radio to reserve your spot. We got breakfast, sandwiches, biscuits and gravy. Got some breakfast cocktails as well. If you're taking the day, make sure you join us here for our live show on November 1st. What's up, Shane?
I can assume that the quote that I just played from Satterfield there, that was the question that was the 3 to 4. That was the follow-up to that right there.
Yeah, I believe so.
Marcus, as a play caller, what's that target number for yards per play that you would aim for? That's within reason.
Yeah, I believe so. It was, it was. I don't remember the exact sequence of how the questions went through, but it's to me, the 4 to 6 yards per play is a nothing burger. I don't care about that at all. I thought Tony White said things that were more concerning yesterday than the 4 to 6 yards per play, much less Marcus Satterfield, which we've already kind of gone over. As we're talking about Tony White's part of the press conference where he goes, hey, there's things that I look at the tape and schematically I wouldn't do again. Like, I find that just as concerning, if not more concerning, than a lot of the things that Satterfield said. Now, I understand the track records are different, and I always talk about context, so that's important. But the context of the 4 to 6 yards per play comment is important too. I don't care about that. If you want to talk about identity crisis, if you want to talk about the conflict between what maybe is viewed as the best skill set of players versus the best identity for the team, we can have that conversation. But the 4 to 6 yards per play thing doesn't matter at all. I really don't think it does. And I do think we've gotten to a point with Satterfield where almost anything he says will be scrutinized to a degree that doesn't make a lot of sense. Even if there are real concerns, hear me out here. Like, hear my heart. Even if there are real concerns, we're going to take things that are nothing burgers and try and turn them into something because of how we feel about Marcus Satterfield already. We as a group, royal we. I don't know that there's anything he can do except for the offense becoming more efficient and more effective that's going to change anybody's minds. And guess what? Even when he does that, because I've heard this over and over again, right? Even when he does that, it's like, oh, well, they must have taken something away from him or whatever. Because this is what happened in South Carolina, is they struggled for a while there before they just explode against like Clemson and Tennessee and have really good offensive performances. And everybody goes, oh, well, they must have taken something away from him. Not that there was ever any reports that actually happened or any evidence that actually happened. It just, Marcus Satterfield clearly could not have improved. That's impossible. So we end up sitting here, and I think that's where we're at this really kind of toxic point with Marcus Satterfield, where we take something that I listened to and hear, he's talking about being on schedule, and we freak out about what it means for national rankings. If you want to freak out about identity, I'm not going to try and talk you off that ledge. If you're freaking out about yards per play, we don't have a lot to talk about. DB, what's going on?
What's going on?
Oh, we're just having a nice little conversation here about parsing through press conferences. How are you this morning?
Yeah, I was well aware. It's a long day yesterday. Long day.
So am I?
And
go ahead.
No, I just culminated it with doing Big Red wrap up, and it was a long day.
There was a lot going on. Yeah. Am I crazy to think, like, I thought it was more concerning, and I get track records are different, but I thought it was more concerning.
Oh, that's right. We haven't talked about this.
No, I was trying to save it for the show.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was more concerning about, we'll start with Satterfield. I thought it was more concerning about the commitment to the run game question than it was the yards per play.
As in a lesser of two evils? Because they both are bad. They both are bad.
However you feel about it.
Yeah. I think it was the lesser of two evils. And I will say this. Just did a straw poll, right? Guys that say 11 or 12 around the country. Most people know their yards per play.
Okay.
So
fair.
I start there, but I okay, so a couple things can be true at once. Is it bad that he did know yards per play? Sure. Yeah, I think that's something he should know. What I think happened though, because I was like, wait, you don't know that? I think you would know that. But I don't think he would know how it would compare to the national average.
I think that's fair.
Nobody really knows that. Well, nobody really – the sense I got is nobody really pays attention to that. They just know what good yards per play ultimately are. You want to be around blank.
Sure.
I don't think people know at least
number one is 7.5.
But that doesn't really let him off the hook so much as I think, okay, if we're only averaging these yards, this amount of yards per play, how is this happening? So I would think you would be going through that constantly.
Yeah.
So while I didn't really move my needle that he didn't know the comp, I did find it odd that he didn't know
his numbers.
Yeah. I also wasn't sure if he understood the question either.
That's kind of where I
thought.
I
don't know if he understood the question, but his I'm just telling. I asked a lot. Like I had to go national with this. I know what people are bothered by.
What's that?
So sometimes when you say something, even if it's not right, your delivery can buy you some time. See, his compounded the problem because he comes off as very, very, very confused.
Uncertain.
Uncertain,
Yeah.
very unsure of himself. So when you double down and put that with the answer,
it gets worse.
Right? So
100%.
I'm certainly not. I know what we're dealing with because at no point yesterday did I think that was funny. Like I didn't. I mean, I came into Big Red Wrap Up mad. I was already pissed at Severe to begin with, but that subsided. I didn't really want to talk to Sipple. Like that whole thing put me in a bad mood because I hate when it was kind of embarrassing. Right? That's how I took it.
Yeah. You mean like nationally?
Yeah.
For Nebraska.
Yeah. So then I was mad at myself for like, should I care what people think? Kind of here, it bugged me. So I think for him, I'm not burying him because I think there's a real struggle going on. And I think rapid fire, I don't think he enjoys talking. He's always been kind of the one-off. Because when I get a chance to know his personality, it's very – I mean, I joke that he wasn't really aware of Bud Crawford's prowess, right? What he does is kind of what he does. He's not like this global deal. So it doesn't surprise me at all on the national versus whatever.
Sure.
I just think he compartmentalizes to focus on what they need to do better. So I don't even know if he's looking at yards per, but I think he should know.
Sure.
So that's
fair.
So I'm not mad at him over that. I think the thing that when I pit that against kind of and I think it's my guy Ryan said, because he said early in the morning, he strikes me as a guy that's kind of serving two masters, right? And it's obviously a biblical thing. The spirit versus the flesh was the reference, but the answer about running the football and committing to it gave me a snapshot in terms of what the real struggle is. The yards per or whatever, that's one thing. The how we got there is the more concerning thing for me. Neither one was good, but I'll tell you why when we come back, because it's fixable. I just don't know if he's willing to go there to do it.
That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. You can give us a call, 888-638-4876. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior Stage. You wanted to get into something as we were talking about Satterfield there that we left off before the break.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, number one, the summer. Number two, the last 3 weeks, because there's a couple things that were said kind of over and over and over and over and over again. Number one, this team is not going to be who they want to be unless the supporting you need to build up the supporting pieces around the quarterback spot, while the quarterback spot eases into what you're ultimately going to ask him to do. It means the O-line has to be better, the receivers have to be better, the ground game has to be better. That's not revisionist history. That's something that I held firm to since the summer, and it's a critical issue right now, right? Because it's easy to fall in love with quarterback talent.
Sure,
it can make. I said this. It can make you lazy.
Yeah,
right. Operation bailout. It's not how this league is built. Okay. Had this exercise where we talked about coordinators and position coaches and assistant coordinators and how in this league, if you have weaknesses or things that teams can exploit, these staffs will find it. It is a well-coached league. Okay, so hold that thought. Then the last 3 weeks, we talked a ton about self-control. People kind of snickered and kiki because it was a weird word to use that I kept using it. But I said you have to start to do some things, even though your best offensive player at that time was your quarterback. So you have to have some control and say, okay, my best decision maker is not the one making decisions right now.
Mhm.
This one's on me. So I pit that against kind of what I'm seeing now. I don't think your quarterback's healthy. I think we have talked about everybody else's deficiencies except for why we failed to put him in a better situation and what's his role in this. We've talked about everybody else. So I look at I pit the yards per thing answer. Like, people want a pound of flesh. Like, it's amazing how, like, people, they want to be so validated and so right. They just hear whatever they want, and you can't be distracted by that, right? So this isn't like this goes for like me or for Coach Rule or for you or anybody. See, the platform isn't to defend everything you say to everybody else. Like, they're going to think what they think, and they're going to do what they do. That can't take away from what it is that we got to bring to the table. Same as my analogy for that is, like, if I try to defend everything that Dennis or Lance or somebody says individually, it gets away from the bigger picture. The bigger picture for me would be, okay, how can we be as entertaining as possible and present the best information that we have and grow the show, right? If I get bogged down in the minutia, then it gets into these little individual things, and I hear what I want to hear. That's what's happening here with Coach Satterfield yesterday. See, we don't like him, right? We're mad at him, and we want things to be fixed, and it's because they care, and so I bitch unnecessarily, and I keep saying the same thing over and over and over and over again for the last 3 months because I want to beat my chest and I want to say I'm right. What this team has to do is he's clearly struggling, right? And he's so oblivious to what else is going on around him nationally that he's just trying to get this thing right. So he answered the question the way he did yesterday. Did I love it? Absolutely not. But see, I want to help him, right? Like, I want him, not me. Like, I want them to be better.
Yeah, it's because you care about the program.
I want it resolved, right? So I'm thinking to myself, okay, so what else? This is what I heard when he gave that answer. I want to be better yards per carry. I want to move the chains. I think that ultimately was his point. He's not a smooth talker.
I heard stay on schedule. That's what I heard.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Not really caring about what everybody else is doing. That's just his personality. Does that let him off the hook? No. So I fast forward from those couple of answers and him kind of stuttering and stammering through that to, okay, I need more discipline. It starts with me. So sure. You have to be at peace with Dylan not running the show all the time, right? You have to be patient, because even in his answer of resolution, he kind of backtracked by, well,
this has been our best.
Eventually, I don't want to just run it to be running it for 1 and 2 yard gains. Well, sometimes you have to go through that, because if you go back and you chart Indiana or you chart Rutgers or some of these teams that run the ball, you do get a lot of 1 or 2 yard gains. So then I was like, well, you have to be patient enough to work through that, because you don't want to assume 2nd and 9, but you have to be prepared for 2nd and 9. That can't be a deterrent. So what do I want to do running the football? Well, if I listen to what Coach Rule said, it's some sort of power counter duo. Okay. So every time we run power counter duo, how can I arrive at that same objective? Because I'll tell you what happens when you game plan. And I think this is for most coordinators around the country. You get formations down, then you chart tendencies, run pass, then you get inside the concepts. Okay, they like gap scheme. Okay, they like duo. Okay, they like whatever. And then you pit that against, this is how we like to play. Do we need to make variations? So you'll see teams that run count. Papillion's a great example. I try not to use us, but it's very, very easy because it's what you would do as a coordinator.
Yeah.
I'm in it. Okay, these are their 3 pet plays. How do they get to them? They get to them like this, they get to them like this, and they do this. The counter is this and this, right? We played Elk South last week. They pull both guards. They run misdirection pitch. So they pull both guards away. They run pitch the other way. When do they do that? Okay, so they'll come back and they have the same thing. Sometimes, how do they keep teams that read guards honest? They will then run toss to the pull. That keeps you honest.
Because you don't know which you're going to go off the pulling guards.
That's the same thing that you have to do in the run game. If I like duo, how many ways can I get to duo? How many different ways can I get to this concept? If I like power, how many different ways can I get to this concept? If I like counter, and maybe I don't want to go old school and pull both guard and tackle. So maybe one time I'll pull a guard and I'll insert with an H-back. Maybe another time I'll put two backs in the backfield. I'll let my guard lead, or I'll let my fullback lead and kick. I'll let my guard kick out. Same plays, different looks. That's really what he's talking about. But we keep saying this, well, the offensive line can't do. They need some help, right? I'm just telling you, and this isn't rocket science. If there's more people fitting in the run game than I have as offensive threats, you better be exceptional. This isn't 2023 Michigan. This is not. I mean, that offensive line was really, really
phenomenal,
good.
yeah.
Those backs are really, really good. They didn't have to have McCarthy run the ball because
you could end up with Corum or Edwards or whoever in a one-on-one, and they were going to win.
And how many times did Michigan run the ball and it looked the same at the end, but they got there different ways?
All the time.
All the time.
It's
the Niners do it. The Ravens do it.
If you want a non-high school example, the 49ers are a great example of this. They have like 3 run concepts.
Yeah.
And they get to it a million different ways, and they use a million different personnel packages. But everything Kyle Shanahan does is the exact same thing as Dad Mike Shanahan does. He just puts a lot of window dressing on it and does it with different personnel packages.
So whether it's motions or formations, like it can be done. You just have to be willing to do it. Because sometimes, like this sounds strange because you always want players that can do everything. You want a pass catcher, you want a route runner, you want a physical guy, you want a good block. So situationally, you have to personnel what you do well. If Liebentritt and Lindenmeyer and Fedoni, well, Lindenmeyer's a little undersized, but if some guys are good lead blockers or Bork, how can I accentuate their strengths? If Jalen Lloyd is really good in the slot, how can I accentuate his strengths? You have to start with what you want to do offensively. Like there has to be some sort of, okay, this is what I want to do. I want a pro-style multiple offense. Well, if you want a pro-style multiple offense, then you have to have multiple people that can do multiple things. At some point, after you see the multiplicity, you have to play to strengths. That's where the whole process versus weighing the outcomes matters. Because right now, whatever processes you have, it's not delivering the outcomes you want. So you have to start to change the processes and figure out in season how you don't want to compromise. So, for example, if I want to get back to power, counter, and duo running the ball, this process hasn't worked for me. Let's try this. So there's a couple things I heard him say that I was encouraged by. He said, it's up to me to figure out how to get these people in the right place to pull this off. Right? Like that was part of the underlying core. That's playing to people's strengths and what they do well to still arrive at that kind of outcome. That's a start. Because I don't want to just state the obvious, right? We can laugh and kiki and point and all that. But the problem is you're still playing football games and you got to get better.
Got Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7, coming up next. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. Joining us now is Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. BC, what's going on, man?
Oh, plenty's going on, but I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Nice quiet day yesterday, BC?
It's
you know what? It was about like after losses, it all ultimately after the press conference is very much the same as wins and how much you write and all that stuff. So it was about the same workload. It was my wedding anniversary, so we went out to eat, and so it was fine. It was a good day.
Congratulations. Where did you eat?
We ate at Carmela's Bistro over there on like 70th and Pioneers over by Venue. All sorts of good spots over there, but that's where we went.
Wow, that's tussled. That's kind of I said tussled, nestled.
It is nestled. You're right. It's by Culver's though.
Yeah. How'd you pick the spot? Is it kind of just like a?
We just like to we'd like to mix it up, and then we hadn't been there in a little bit, so it was kind of that turn. So it was just happened to be the pick of the wife, and when the wife picks something, you usually say, okay, that's where we're going. So that's what happened.
What was your go-to?
I had sea bass.
Good man.
Yeah, it was pretty good. So I give it a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Is it your go-to because your wife so rarely knows where she wants to eat? Because that's how it is in my house. Is if she actually knows where she wants to eat, there's no questions. We're going.
It's funny. I think this is a common thing with the married people. Food discussions can turn into the most dangerous things of all. It can
lead to several fights.
Yeah, it can spin out of control like a second half. Like it's like you think you're driving somewhere, at the 15-yard line, and it goes the other way, and then everything kind of spins out of control. So I think that would be how I'd segue. But yeah, there's definitely got to be careful on that. You got to be bouncy on your feet and ready.
Hey, how much of yesterday, BC? Because I took it. I don't know if it was different than most. I didn't really find the humor or kind of the "I told you so" moments. I went to, okay, how do we? What do I think he's saying? I'm talking about Coach Satterfield, and how do we get better from that? So, if I start with that summation, am I in the minority or the majority with that? However long he talked, 10 minutes or whatever.
As far as trying to look for something to progress as opposed to I told you so, I think there was probably a little more I told you so in some corners going on. But it's always tough for me. I always say this every week with you guys. I can't gauge that completely. There's just so many different pockets of the fan base, and everybody kind of goes their own way with their thoughts on things. There's a couple things that I know the comment about the 4 to 6 yards got a lot of play. I didn't stop on that as much as some other people. I think he knows his yards per play deep down. It was one of those where you're probably talking about like, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt here where you want about 4 to 6 per play most of the time, and you feel like you're in good down and distance sort of situation. So I don't know. I don't know if that's what it was or not, but that's not where I stopped. But yeah, there's the stuff about like the run game and him wanting to be more committed to it as a coordinator, and kind of pointing the thumb back at him on that. I thought that was maybe the biggest takeaway for me.
Brian, as we kind of, parse through Satterfield's comments, what was, I guess, the more concerning part to you? Was it, not knowing what Nebraska's yards per play is, or was it kind of that part about talking about not being able to commit to the run game and kind of needing to do better? Like, was there a part that particularly raised your eyebrows a little bit as like, I don't love that?
Probably 7 games in, not feeling like you've committed to the run game how you want to or should, or sort of how he expressed that. People can get that direct quote, make sure I am close enough to the truth on that. But I felt like that's kind of how it was said. That part was more noticeable or stood out to me as far as this team going forward and what really matters than the other part. I just think that's sort of the easy one to pick out of the air from the press conference, but I don't think it matters if this thing's going to succeed or not, really. that particular answer. So the run game part is interesting, though. How do you do it? How do you get yourself in the right sets to accomplish that and still present to the defense that you can do other things out of those sets? I mean, it's very complex stuff above my football brain, and I think it's all very difficult to fix sort of midstream. And so I always go back to, like, I do think about like the perimeter blocking and stuff like that. And I saw just too many cases in that game Saturday where there's one-on-ones, and I'm not just talking about jump balls. I'm talking about one-on-ones all over the field where I felt like Indiana was winning. I don't know what the percentage is, but it was high. It was 85, 90%. It felt like they were, 175 corner was scooting around a 210-pound blocker on the perimeter or stuff like that. It just, that stuff, I think you can challenge your guys and hopefully improve at as the season finishes and really test them. Like, there's going to be all these one-on-one matchups. You got to go win that for your teammates. And if nothing else, all these guys in the locker room, you have to win those battles, and it will lead to this, which can lead to that. And I think that's what they were trying to show players, it seems like, on Sunday and Monday, how all these little things are interrelated, and it ultimately ends up with, if you're in a game or if you're, having to explain 56-7 afterwards.
BC, based on what you've seen from this team so far this year, do you believe they've got the personnel to be able to commit to the run game the way that they've talked about and have an offense that that is good enough to accomplish their goals?
I think they could commit more to it and get enough done to put themselves in manageables. I don't know that I believe they're going to ever be dynamic at it with this particular bunch at this point, but I do think there's more that you can chew off there, and I think that's sort of what Satterfield was getting at with that run game question, and getting those running backs going a little bit more, and that, like, the first drive of the second half up until they got in the red zone, that was the most encouraging one of the game to me, because they early on in that they settled the game down. They got some easy plays where it was like 3rd and 2, I think, early on in that drive, and they moved the sticks effectively. They chewed some clock and kind of controlled the game a little bit momentarily. And so I think stuff like that you look at and see if you can build on going into a game like this on Saturday. I don't think this is going to be an easy fix by any means, but I think you got to set your quarterback up with some nice down and distance. And then I think the QB's got to let it rip a little bit in some circumstances. I think he was a little tentative. It's not just guys not getting open. It's across the board. There's some things everybody's got to be honest about and know that they can improve on.
Yeah, BC, I apologize because I'm pretty authentic and it's always raw. And I find myself yesterday and then today or this morning, and I'm listening, and anger is the thing, and I'm gonna tell you why. We talked to you 3 weeks ago, and I gave some stats. I said 4 of 7 in the third quarter. They ran the ball 10 times for 51 yards. That shows commitment. They had the ball for 9 minutes and 43 seconds, but we're mad that it didn't generate points. Can that be kind of a thing? And then the next 2 weeks of press conferences. Now, the coaches have to share some responsibility in this too, because you can hear and understand what's going on, but you don't have to defend it in the pressers. Because for the next 2 weeks, I heard we want to be, this is what we want to do, and yeah, we can score some points if we have to. But what we wanted to do was we wanted to run the ball, get out of there, and get a win. Fast forward, and I was like, I'm not defending not scoring any points, but the methodology has to be in place. It's a mindset. These are the things that I said if you want to build on the season. So in like this, it seems like in a rush to appease and to kind of be something that maybe they're not really capable of being in their best interest, which is more dynamic and getting away from the quote-unquote gimmick runs. And it's like we've kind of lost the reality of what they want to be. But I feel like everybody's involved. I feel like they wanted to do that. It wasn't good enough because it didn't generate points. They weren't firm enough in it. So we started talking about schematics through the media, and now we're here and we're scrambling at every answer that they give because they don't know what's what. And there's this part of me that says, well, for $1.4 million, you better figure it out. But then there's this other part of me that says, why can't we just be patient? Right? Like, so that's the duality. I don't know if this is like you're my therapist, but this is what you're hearing. And my frustration of level, I don't want to be right. I want to get it right. I felt like they were on to something early, even though it wasn't generating points, but we didn't let it be good enough.
Yeah.
And now I think he's just shook, right? It's like, I don't care that he doesn't know what the national average is. I heard that he wants first downs and to move the sticks, but the answer sounded bad, and I understand because it made me mad. But I still don't think that was his intent, right? But two things can be true at once. For what you're asked to do, you have to be better in those situations, right? But I then I can fall back on the part where, okay, concept-wise, if this is what we want to do, what personnel and formations do I need to get us in to achieve those goals? Then I'm like, yes, that's what I'm talking about, right? Is it 2-back versus 1-back? Is it getting another run threat in there from out of the gun? Is it getting underneath center? So then I'm encouraged again. You know what I mean? That's the duality you're hearing.
Let me ask you this, Damon. What's the challenge because of the way the schedule falls where you're playing, we can be honest about this, a completely different animal this week than you will see the rest of the season, and you're just coming off a 56-7 game. And so I'm curious, like, as an offensive coordinator, you are very mindful of the fact you just got your tail whipped. You're playing a team that can embarrass you in a hurry also, and how you balance that of how you want to build for future games or compete or, put your best forward in this game while also being mindful of how can I control this clock a little bit? How can I work this game that my guys still feel good coming out in the UCLA and all those other games? And I know that sounds like a defeatist way to pose the question, but it's a real thought I've been thinking about this week. You think about that at all with this dynamic of who they're playing and then what's after that and what you're trying to build?
I do. And that's a great question. And if it were just me and I would look at where I feel like, because I always want to win the game, right? So I'm looking at Ohio State. This is defensively because we are talking about offense. I'm like, okay, where have they been? What haven't they done as well, right? So I look at boundary run game. I look at how they align to certain formations. I kind of look at Oregon, even though I don't have Gabriel as a running threat. I look at the concepts, right? So, all right, they held the backside in, they showed a little triple, they went to the boundary. Is there a way that we can play that fits that scheme? Okay, that could be kind of like counter. And if we don't like counter, then we can do RPO and use a different back to replace Dylan. So I start there. Then I'm like, okay, if that's just Ohio State specific, is this portable for UCLA and USC and Wisconsin and Iowa? And I think it is, because those 4 remaining games are legitimate fist fights. Is what I want to do in Columbus fist fighty enough that I think it's sustainable? They have to start, BC, with not caring about what the final score is. They need 3 things. They need 3 things. You better figure out how you get your ass to compete emotionally. And if you can't get it, play somebody else. Start there, because that's the accountability piece. He's going to ask it of his coaches. The coaches have to demand it of the players. I don't care what you're getting for NIL money. I don't care what you've been. You don't have to panic, but you do have to enhance the culture. This is a culture game. Number 2 is, Once we figure out if we want to compete or not, schematically, what can we take with us for the second half of the season? What are our goals?
Mm-hmm.
Well, our goals are to win 6 or 7 games or 8 games or get to a bowl or whatever it is, right? What gives us the best chance to do that? Let's start that this week. You guys in with me? Yes, coach. All right, let's go roll. And the third thing is stop. Don't be so reactionary. If you believe in it and it works and you know that it works, just stay with it. I don't. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's the screen game, if it's quick game, if it's whatever it is, stay with it and master that, because that's what beats them. I look at Illinois, very efficient at a few things. I looked at Indiana, way efficient at just a few things. Like, you don't have to be everything to everyone. Just be something to yourself and start there. That's the only way you can bridge, in my opinion, the competitive gap until you get personnel that you think can be competitive across the board. That's me.
Yeah. And to your latter point, I think that's what Rule was really stressing when he was talking about the interrelated part. And it's like the bubble screen to Jacory, when you're on the 15-yard line and you have a chance to make it a 14-point game, and maybe it's a different kind of game. And it's just like this guy, if this guy takes out the safety, or if this guy does here, you see how the play works, and you see how then that play works into the drive and then into the game. And I think that goes to the point of just there's some certain things you just have to do at a higher level. We can talk about, turning the boat over and doing all this other stuff, but some of that's just not realistic. You just have to get guys to reach that other level. And you do have to get that mindset, I think, at a game like this, where Rule said this as well. I mean, Ohio State, everybody on that roster believes they're going to the NFL. You got to be have those type of players who I can play in that league too. I'm planning on playing on that league. And so if I am that caliber of player, I'm not going to back down from a game like this. And I'm not going to go in with that defeatist attitude, even though my question was a little bit. I'm on the outside of the walls, I guess, so I can do that. But yeah, I just think it's a tough animal because of who you're playing and how you're trying to find that portable stuff beyond. But it was interesting hearing your answer there.
BC, do you think because of how kind of we felt about Satterfield kind of going into the season and maybe even before that we haven't necessarily paid enough attention towards the rest of the coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball being accountable? I mean, we've talked a ton about perimeter blocking. Like, is that all on Satterfield? We've talked about, some people have talked about they think maybe Dylan's regressing a little bit or maybe he's banged up or whatever. Like, do we talk about Glenn Thomas enough? Like, do you think we're not paying enough attention to the rest of the side of that ball?
Oh, maybe that is happening, but I don't think it is where it matters, like within their room. Like, I think everybody feels like I got to ramp it up and that my position group has to be better. What can I do that gets my guys going to another level? And hopefully all your players are like that too, where you're looking inward first. And then, as they said, the nice thing is the film always brings the truth out, and you can't ignore it. And so there's certain things on there that guys saw, and there's like, yeah, it's just not going to fly. That's not going to work. You're going to have to do that at a higher level. So it should be easy to get guys' attention with all that stuff. And I think all the coaches over there probably feel like they got to, raise their game just as much as the OC. So those discussions might be happening in radio segments and all that stuff about more on Satterfield than the other guys. But I think, again, within the coaching staff, everybody feels like they gotta handle their weight here to find some solutions.
BC, what's the trick, or what's the anecdote, do you think, to continue to play the long game? Because you're 5-2, you've got a tough opponent, you're gonna potentially be 5-3. You still have a lot of goals in play while you're refining, or while you're trying to get better in some key areas. What's the message, do you think, to stay the course while you're trying to grow? Is
I think
is it the individual win? Like, I'm just trying to kind of compartmentalize growth.
all your veterans on this roster have never been to a bowl game, first off. So even though the immediate reaction from some is like, they're not going to win another game. So, there's that over the top. And
that's
who knows?
ridiculous.
We'll see how it plays out. But that's in front of this team, and building beyond that and getting to a quality bowl, all that's out there for these guys. So they should still feel like that there's a lot to this season where they can put a mark on it and make an improvement for Husker football that builds into the future. And I think you just got to remind guys of that. Maybe it did change the conversation. Let's be real. Like, there was the dreamers out there, the dream of like, okay, go get 9-10 wins. Who knows what can happen, that sort of thing, where you're talking about national rankings and all that. Okay, we're not talking about that right now, but you can put in front of your guys. There's a lot of things that you can mark off on the sheet for this program over the course of these last 5 games that show there's progress been made. And you got to start putting those building blocks in place this Saturday, even if it's not a win. That's why I was asked that question to you, because I'm so curious how you handle that, because there is a lot of fish to fry after that game, I think. And there's an opportunity to be 6-3 or something like that at the second bye, and then people have a little hop back in their step, and you see what you can do down the stretch in November. So I think somehow you got to get guys thinking on that level again. Like, there's still
you have a lot of winnable games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also reminding them, and there's going to be people on the outside who they're going to say you stink and all this. You guys think you're good players. We think you're good players as coaches. Let's go do it together. Let's go prove that. Let's put stuff that's better on tape than we did last Saturday, and just keep building it week after week. And if you do that, there's the capability on this roster to still get to, I don't know what the win total. Let's win a couple more games, and you're in a bowl game and all that. So I think you just gotta push that ahead with your guys and hope they respond the right way.
That's Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. Great conversation, BC. We appreciate it as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, B. I just think Rule is. I think he's a great motivator, and I think he's a good culture builder. I think don't detour. Don't detour. I trust that he'll make the changes that he needs to make.
That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andy Kendeigh coming up next from KETV. Halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. We're joined now by Andy Kendeigh from KETV. Hey, K, what's going on?
You with us, AK? Nah.
I don't think we got him, Shane. Let's try again. We'll re-effort Andy Kendeigh here in just a second.
Is that what it is, re-effort?
Efforting? I don't know.
I may neither.
I have no idea. We'll try and talk to Andy here in a second if we can get a hold of him.
I wish we could go back and getting better around good quarterbacks.
Yeah, in terms of the people, like the personnel around him. I think there's a couple things there that are important. One, I think, is getting better around the quarterback. And two, I think, is playing to those people's strengths. Because one way to get better in a hurry is to play to the strengths of the guys you already have.
Okay, we can try it again here.
Let's try again here with Andy Kendeigh from KETV. Andy, what's going on, man?
Good morning. How you doing?
Morning.
We're doing all right. How are you?
Hey.
I'm good.
AK.
Yo.
How was your donut in Bloomington?
That was it. If you would have told me that would be your high point of the day, I don't know if I'd believe you, but it turned out to be the high point of my day. It was like a French toast frosted donut.
I've never seen media so jovial over the bringing out of 60 boxes of donuts. So we had to come out because we're back there in that little heated cubby hole over there, and we hear this faint cheer. It's like 7:30 in the morning. Like there's 12 people in here. What's the big deal? Lo and behold, it was the delivery of these boxes of donuts. Apparently, those things are legendary.
Well, and they lived up to the billing because I crushed one. I crushed one. And Damon, as you know, I was in a good behavioral situation to absorb a donut at that early state in the morning.
I didn't bring that up. So I didn't talk about that.
That just soaked things up, if you know what I mean. And it was delicious. It was delicious.
I'd never seen anything like that. They're these. They look like fritters, kind of. They were a monstrosity. And I know one was blueberry, one was French toast. What was the third kind?
It had almost like a strawberry topping. I don't know, and I don't know who made them. That's bad on me. I should have gotten the name on the box.
It was plastered all over those things. I didn't eat them, so I didn't look at it. But the joy that people got, it was incredible.
Well, and it's funny because of word of mouth that spreads through the press box. You tried a donut? You tried a donut? Yet? And I was like, oh my God, I guess I got to try a donut. And then I got crushed. That had no chance. I was Curtis Rourke that morning.
And that was also the first time I've seen. That's the first place I've been where they kept the food out the whole game.
Mm.
Yeah, and let's just say the donuts far out.
Or the star of the show.
Yeah, the donuts were the star of the show. Let's just put it that way.
AK, who do we have?
Yeah, how about that? I was going to say I did feel sorry for you, DB, because you were getting pummeled by that sun, and you were dressed for more of a fall-like situation, and you were in a sauna, man. I mean, that sun was just beating down on the visitors' radio booth, which is right by the press box. We could see you.
Then I had to watch what was going on, and I was triply pissed. It's not funny, AK. So, where would you start if you're? Let's just talk about, because I want to talk about Coach Rhule's strengths, like what we think he's good at, whether it's motivational, whether it's the culture building, whether it's roster management, whatever AK thinks right now you think Coach Rhule is good at. What would you accentuate this week to go to Columbus?
I would probably go back to basics if I'm Coach Rhule and lean on what you've built so far, because for whatever reason it's splintered in Bloomington. Here's the thing, the bottom line, people look at the final score. I got texts, I'm sure you guys got texts from guys who didn't, or gals who didn't watch the whole game, right? Anybody who watched that whole game, it was 56-7, but it was one of those games that could have very well been 28-7, 31-7, 38-7, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? It just got out of hand at the end. Some of it by choice of the way they handled the late stages of the game. I go back to the situation that, the game was in the balance multiple times in the first half, and you can make the argument it was still in the balance in that opening drive in the third quarter. So you're right there if you make a couple plays. And I think if you're Coach Rhule, you say, hey guys, let's see what we did wrong, which was plenty, but let's figure out ways to not do that again and accentuate the lean back on the culture that you've built, right? Because you want to keep these guys together. Because once the thing that really struck me after, in the limited people that we got to talk to, was the Jamari Butler bite about guys hanging their heads, and here we go again, and the whole bit. And I was a little struck by it. I was like, we're still here. But that's still where this program is. Until they can get one of those over the hump seasons, and a lot of people thought that this would be it, and it still could be. Like, that's the thing. When it's all said and done, they're still 5-2, right? Take away this huge blemish on the season schedule. You're still 5-2 with the opportunity in front of you, not just to play Ohio State, but to play Ohio State in Columbus. And then not just that, but you still have 4 games left on your schedule after this. So, let's go in there. You got nothing to lose. Nobody thinks you're going to win this weekend. So let's just go out and have some fun and do what they do best and play football. Like, quit worrying about all this other stuff and just go play football. That's the thing. The best thing I heard Coach Rhule say on Monday that really stuck out with me, hey, guys, you guys think you're NFL players? These guys are NFL players. Go compete with them. Go compete with them and see what happens. and let it fall. Like don't be so scoreboard oriented. Just go out and go play football. That's what I think that's the key to this.
I know, and that's why I'm revved so high, man. It's whether it's FSU 93 and that feeling, whether it's Texas, whether it's getting annihilated by Arizona State, whether it's some games at high school, like it's very doable to still compete even though you feel like trash, right? Like, so that's what I want for people, right? I want you to like come out of the back end. So I just feel like that's where my energy is. Like, don't lay down. Don't sit around bitching and moaning. Like just go fight and see what happens. And I do think he's really good at that, right? He's been kicked in the teeth before.
Yep, and I agree. And I almost think, DB, sometimes the not just Coach Rule, but the coaching staff sometimes gets into trouble because they're so transparent. Like after the game when Coach Rule says, I didn't see it coming. Well, yeah, of course you didn't see it coming. Nobody saw this coming because there was no signs that would lead anyone to believe that this type of performance was coming. And then, the thing with Coach Satterfield yesterday about the yards per play, which really took on a life of its own. Does he need to memorize who's leading every stat in the country? I don't think so. All he knows is they've got to do a little better than they've done, and obviously they do have to do better. So, I just think that this team just needs to go out and compete. If you think you're that good, and a lot of these guys think they're that good, right? Well, then go prove it.
I don't know. Do they?
In Columbus are that good? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, a lot of people think that this is not their last time playing football, right? They're not not their last place playing football. You would think, right?
Good
Well,
point.
Coach Rule believes that. I don't know if they do yet because he's brought up that bear a lot of times.
Well, that's a great point.
That's why I asked the question.
I don't know why these kids at this point that's the confidence issue is the one that's a little bit concerning to me. Like why aren't you confident? You should be confident. You've won 5 out of 7 games this year. You beat Colorado at home. Like you should be confident. You took an Illinois team, which is a really solid team, into overtime. Yeah, the overtime didn't go the way you wanted, but you competed. Go compete. And if the team's better than you, it's okay. But don't lay down and compete until the clock hits 000.
AK, we appreciate the time as always. We will talk to you again soon, and hopefully, I don't know if they'll have the same kind of donuts in Columbus, but hopefully you get hooked up with some breakfast.
DB, all I know, and fellas, Ravi, one year they served McFlurries in the Ohio State press box.
Oh,
I just hope the stairs are easier to navigate. Your boy had to stretch. I need another hip replacement, and there was nobody in there when I almost fell down the stairs the first time, and I was like, I'm the only person in here that almost fell down the stairs and up.
Evie, you would have sent me a text that said I'd fallen and I can't get up.
Oh yeah, I was out.
Gotta get that life alert button. Have you and AK hooked up so we can help you out.
Bro, the stairs were like 6 feet.
Andy, we appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Thanks, AK.
We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Welcome back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Before we get to anything else, let's get to our friend Jack here on the Hurrdat Hotline. Is this Tennessee Jack?
Golden voice, Jack.
Hey, guys. Good morning.
What's up, Jack?
Hey, fellas. Good morning. Just following up a little bit on this thing we were talking about this morning.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I don't think this team has that offensive identity that they want. And I wonder, my question is it are we trying to do too much where the left hand never knows what the right hand's doing, so to speak? I think back to one time this was really interesting. That Big Ten was interviewing P.J. Fleck when they were going through their 9-3, 10-2 seasons and just really rolling. They had him and his quarterback. I don't even remember who it is because this goes back to the Riley years.
Mm-hmm.
And they said they run 7 basic offensive plays. 7 basic offensive plays. They have different sets and different formations based off those, 2 to 3 or whatever. But they run the same plays over and over and over again. And you think about the years, they cranked out 800-yard rushers, 1,000-yard rushers, and it didn't matter who graduated. And I'm not a Minnesota fan, and I'm not a P.J. Fleck fan, but it's the truth is the truth. didn't matter who graduated or who got hurt. The next guy was just as good because everybody knew what everybody else was doing all the time. And I think sometimes we get, I know, like when we tried to run the West Coast and they had a playbook that looked like a volume of War and Peace, and nobody knew. It's never ever clicked.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, I think this weekend is a perfect opponent. I've heard the media say, "Oh, woe is us. We got to go play Ohio State," and fans say, I think it's perfect. And I'll tell you why. If we get beat 28-10, 28-14, if it's 30 to, if it's, I don't care what it is, but we're going to find out how much character this team's got this weekend.
Yeah.
We're going to find out where the rest of this season is going to go, regardless of the score after this weekend.
I appreciate the call.
Good call, Jack.
I think something he said, there's some conflicting worlds, right? There's this NFL mentality of salting clock and coming out with wins and not caring about the stop points versus needing a different game plan every week. At the collegiate level, I think it's hard to come up with different game plans every week. There's wrinkles to what you core do. You can't come up with different game plans every week. I told you the other day I was dumb enough, and I was kicking myself. I'm like, well, you really thought the fact that Nebraska had done so many different things leading up to Indiana that would actually be an advantage, right?
Yeah.
Because of film study. Because if I was Indiana, I'm like, I don't know what I'd really take away here, right? Because when you watch Indiana defensively on film, they do pretty much the same thing with two coverages.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, maybe that's an advantage for Nebraska. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It's fine. I'll eat it. But what I do think, what I do think happened is because we have such a good quarterback, right? And he's this 5-star, and we want to make sure everything's okay. And he's arguably our best player. We heard a lot of that early. So I think what happened was we compromised. We sacrificed the reality of ourselves and went all in on the talent. And now
sacrifice the reality of the rest of the team, of what the rest of the team was, or just
what you want it to look like.
Oh, sure, okay, identity.
What you want it to look like.
Okay.
And instead, because it was hard to ask a guy that has such talent to come down
dial
a little,
back.
to dial down a little, and let's establish this for the long haul in case something happens to you or you're not here. Versus, man, we got to catch everybody else up, and we're not really capable of long-term sustainability. And, oh, by the way, what happens if he has an off day? So that's what we're seeing. Nobody wants to say that, but that's really what we're seeing.
You know who did
that's why it seems so. Throw it on the wall and see what sticks.
You know who did a really, really good job of that?
Who's that?
Jim Harbaugh with Andrew Luck at Stanford. Did a really, really good job of staying true to who he was and who his team was.
He's doing it right now with Herbert.
100%, right? Herbert can do more than we're seeing.
Well,
J.J. McCarthy could have done more.
That's an interesting one.
J.J. McCarthy could have done more than what we saw from J.J. McCarthy, right?
But I get it, man. You have a brand new toy to play with.
It's really hard.
You want to play with it.
It's really, really hard to see the talent of an Andrew Luck or a Justin Herbert or a J.J. McCarthy or whoever and be able to say, hey, I get you're super talented. I thank you for coming here. You've made us better, but this is how we operate.
And this isn't an indictment, because I bet you if you just sat Dylan down, it's what he'd want anyway.
100%. That dude wants to win.
Yeah, I don't like his. I mean, he's happy. Like, I'm not gonna say he's not going anywhere. He's not going. He doesn't because anything can happen. I said that about Trev. But it's not like we're over. We're overdoing this. Let's get to Nate Shano. Nate, good morning,
hey,
man. What's up? What's up, buddy?
DB, how you been, man? I leave for a year. You got a new show, a new swag. I love it.
No way, Nate. Where in the world have you been?
I took a little ministry assignment down in Texas. Went down, learned a few things, but you know what I'm saying? It's been a long time. I should have left you without dope beat the step to. So Nate's back on the north side, man. We in here.
Wow. What's up, buddy?
What's good,
I know
DB?
you're gonna drop some bomb, and it's gonna make me mad. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna say, "Oh, I like that guy." You can say that.
It always makes sense too. Like I'm never left field. right? I'm just ahead of the curve, right? Okay, so
Oh Lord.
first, I'm out on Satterfield,
Yeah.
and I completely see this as Cosgrove 2.0. We are going to see whether or not Rule is serious about leading this program, because I will tell you, for a complete variety of only on-field football reasons, I think Sat is a real high-quality human being. I met him once, nicest guy in the world.
Yeah.
This guy is not a division. Well, he's not a pack. Well, he's not in the pack that's going to get you in the Big Ten, the SEC, etc. He's not a P4 OC. This guy's great in the MAC. I think he's a good play designer. I see what he wants to do on a given play, but no drive ever makes sense. He's like the guy that asks out the hot chick, and he finally gets up the courage and he asks out the hot chick, and then the hot chick surprisingly says yes, and he gets that 40-yard reverse with Barney, and then after that he's like, oh my gosh, I finally got it. What do I do with it? And it's like off tackle run when you know nobody on the line can block. Or we'll try something different on the outside kind of run, even though your receivers get more holding plays than most teams' offensive lines. Like, he does not know what to do successively. There's never a plan that leads to a plan that leads to a plan, ever. And it goes back to SC. I did my homework. I went back and looked at it to see if this is just an anomaly, because last year I was very gracious to him, personnel issues, new system issues. It's actually who he is. It's total chaos. Second, I don't understand, and I'm not going to go super crazy and go Raiola's a bust. I'm not going to do that. I think it's still a little early, but there are some terminal flaws in Dylan Raiola, and either they're going to coach him out or this kid's going to be a problem, right? Like, so everybody loves the Patrick Mahomes crap until you realize the Patrick Mahomes crap only works when Patrick Mahomes is surrounded by Xavier Worthy, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. This sidearm nonsense that he does, he's not throwing to all pro and future Hall of Fame wide receivers and tight ends. There's no bailout on the other end for him to do this. The fact that first of all, let's give some credit. His uncle has fixed the offensive line from passing coverage. Raiola's getting time to pass on most downs, certainly enough time to pass, right? But when it starts to break down because the receivers really aren't that good and you start having coverage sack type situations, he refuses to run. I mean, he patently refuses to run. If you put a gun to his head, he'd probably stand still and wait for the sack. Then beyond that, you have the situation where his favorite play, because he watches Mahomes too much, is the 5-yard dink and dunk check down. So you see Indiana, Illinois to a lesser extent, but Indiana, they started putting another man in the box that was essentially functioning as a running back spy, knowing that Raiola, as soon as he felt he was just going to forgo the route, not scramble, and dink and dunk 5 yards down, either to an out receiver or to a back out of the outfield who releases. I mean, this is like elementary football 101, and Sat's missing it. His quarterback coach is missing it, and Raiola keeps doing it. I'll excuse it as a freshman, but if he does this crap next year, I'm out on him too, because there seems to be a cognitive block. Best beat ball I've ever seen, especially from a young kid, but there's a cognitive block. Last one, you're going to hate this, and that's okay. Here's your big grenade. Matt Rule is the final form of the Nebraska head coach. Check this out. Matt Rule is losing games he should win by large margins, like Pelini. Matt Rule is seeing major chokes in the end of games like Scott Frost. He's doing it with some seriously elite talent at certain positions like Callahan. He comes in here and we love him, and he's a nice guy and he fits in just like Riley. And now he goes to practice and has T.O. over his shoulder every day, just like Solich. Matt Rule is the best and the worst of all of these people combined, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing yet. I'm back.
Oh, man. Thanks, Nate. Wow.
Why do you like that guy?
I just do.
Because he might have called them grenades. I call them dumbass bombs.
I'm going to pick a truth out of that.
You can pick whatever truth you want out of there, but it's wrapped in a lot of nonsense.
The low hole scheme from Indiana on the check down is 100% accurate.
Sure.
Why did the intermediate passing game work? Because they would get over the tops of ones, they would squat the corner, they go low hole, high hole.
Sure.
So tight ends and intermediate passing games was there. At least that was.
You got one thing right. Hey, one for whatever 10 points.
Nate got a little accent being down in the South now, Shane.
I'm just saying there was a lot of dumbassness in that call. He seems like a nice guy though.
Nate's great.
I don't know about that. Mitch Sherman coming up next. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We're joined now by Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch, how are you this morning?
Good morning. I am doing well. How are you guys?
I'm good. Mitch, what were the odds that you happened to hear our last caller, Nate?
Oh, I heard it.
Okay. I know people want me to react like that call was crazy. I don't actually think that call was crazy, to be honest, as I'm kind of parsing through what he said versus.
No, I don't think crazy is not the word I would use. I think there was some overreactiveness in there.
Yes. Yep.
Now some would say, hey, I've been watching this for 19 games and whatever, this or this or this is just now getting exposed. I'm not in that camp. But it was like overreaction laced with truth and a lot of emotion, which is good.
Can I just say,
Mitch said, "Oh, I heard it."
Can I just say those are the most dangerous types of people, are the people that weave truth into total nonsense, because there's part you're like, wait, that part's right, and I think
I didn't say total nonsense.
I know you didn't. I am. I'm going to go ahead and I'll take the burden of that label.
I don't think it was total nonsense.
I think there was some. See, that's why though. That's why it's dangerous, because you weave in truth.
Because I can eat the meat and spit out the bones. I'm asking what part. So my question was going to.
You might be able to, but I think that's what's dangerous for a lot of people when you weave some truth in there and then you wrap it around with overreactions. I'll use your word this time. You wrap it around overreactions because then the overreactions seem more rational. Because here, I
read worse in my direct messages every day.
Yeah.
I know.
I'll tell you what was total nonsense.
I know you do.
Yeah, I do. Yes. I'll tell you what was total nonsense was the part at the end about Osborne looking over his shoulder at every practice.
Yeah.
Like, you want to say that happened. I don't
because
when he was the AD,
because Coach Rule has referenced Coach Osborne.
Yeah, because sometimes you see his car parked out
eight times out of however many presser or however, right?
Tom is 87.
Yeah,
like he's not looking over like we can talk about how it was, shortly after he retired, maybe when he got out of Congress and he was the athletic director, and like was his influence was good, good intentioned, but detrimental on some level. Fine. But like not at age 87. Like he likes to come to practice and see the guys running around. He's got his sweatpants and his dress shirt on, and everything's cool I'm sorry. He's not Tom Osborne is not pushing the buttons for Matt Rule. So let's get past that 20-year-old talking point.
I want to start with, so this is kind of like, again, if I stay in the solutions business, I said this to Ravi off air. I really like Coach Rule, and I like it for a couple reasons. Number one, I think if something was wrong with me or somebody else, like his natural inclination is to help. Number two, I think he wants the best for people. Number three, it's 2A. Like, I think he wants to see people succeed. And number three is I think he's highly competitive. Those skills, those attributes, if you agree with me, have to be fairly important in trying to lift this boat, right? Like, that's kind of what I'm focusing on when I'm looking for ways to get this thing right. Is that part of healthy philosophy for me?
I think that's fair. I think that's all fair. I wonder, and this is maybe an overreaction on my part, because I'm looking at the last game and not the whole picture. And that's just human nature. And I know what is out there on Saturday. So there's more anxiety about what's going to happen if you're, putting yourself in Nebraska's shoes. But I wonder, why is Nebraska in a position where the boat has to be lifted at this level right now? Like it shouldn't, and it's just like the basic takeaway that I think everybody had on Saturday coming out of Bloomington is,
so are you
that
saying
shouldn't have happened?
Because you don't think they should be capable of laying an egg? Is that what you're saying?
They can lay an egg. I don't think the egg should look like that. Like where almost every play in the game, the advantage went to the other team. You can lay an egg. You can lay an egg and lose by 14. And I do think it matters. I understand on some basic level that a loss is a loss is a loss. That isn't the case historically with Nebraska football. Like you've seen things, teams, and even regimes, and I'm not saying that that's happening here, but you've seen things fall apart on a fundamental level, and sometimes all it takes is one game.
Mitch, when you're looking at what it looked like on Saturday versus the reality of what the rest of the season has been, I guess, how do you weigh the concern of what it looked like versus the fact that after Ohio State, there's 4 games on the table that I think are winnable, that are, I mean, basically coin flip games, and that before the season, everything that pretty much anybody talked about is still 100% on the table. Like, how do you weigh those two things that seem to be in conflict?
Sure. You are okay with the position you're in going into November, but you're not happy with the process by which you got there. If the Ohio State game could go differently, it could look a lot different than what we're expecting. Maybe Nebraska plays good football. It's competitive. You measure yourself against the best in the country, and you come out feeling okay about it, even if it's an L. And then we're probably having a different conversation next week. But if what is fresh in your mind, if that rolls over into this Saturday, then I think a lot of people are going to want to just throw out the numbers and say, man, this is not how it should feel going into November. I had an interesting conversation with Jesse Temple, who covers Wisconsin for The Athletic, early this week. And the Badgers are 5-2, just like Nebraska. And they're going into a game this week against the top 5 team, Penn State, just like Nebraska's going into a game against a top 5 team. And it's amazing how much different the vibe is around Wisconsin football right now than it is around Nebraska. And I get it. Like we are, we're a prisoner of the moment, and we think in short term when the seasons have been 7 games long. But I think some of that stuff is like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and like it's hard. I asked some of the players about this yesterday. And they gave the right answers, but I wonder how difficult it is to tune that stuff out and to not and just for them to feel it too, even if they're not paying attention to what's being said in the public. Like you feel it too. Like 5-2 doesn't feel the same at every place. And then that's the same answer I'd give projecting into next week. Like 5-3, if that's what it is, isn't going to feel the same. 5-3 can be okay at one place. It can be okay at Nebraska one year and then not okay the next year, even if the expectations have only gone from like here to here, a small increase.
Yeah, I would guess I get the analogy, but the thing that I think is odd from Wisconsin is if you rewind from the 2 wins post the 2 losses when they happen in succession, especially post USC, I think there would be a lot of similarities. So maybe it's when you lose, not necessarily how.
It's kind of some of it, yeah.
Right.
They were feeling pretty bad 2 weeks ago there.
Yeah, I think that's like it. That does need context. But I will say to your point, Mitch, the Cosgrove thing drives me crazy because I don't even count last year based on how Nebraska even won games. I don't. Right. I think that the part of the ability to adapt and be willing to do different things actually Coach Satterfield's temperament served Nebraska well. This year, I understand, right? It's not good yet. I'm not. There's nothing really where I'm like, ooh, I'm super excited. But I think the Cosgrove label is unfair. We'll see what Coach Rule does if and when he actually has to make a decision. And the other thing is, you can at least occasionally see some sequential concepts. Now, we can get into the timing and when you do it, or play design versus play calling. But when you're in season, you can't just scrap it. So I think, as hard as it is to say, I almost want to say, don't we have to see a little bit here on the bounce back, even if we didn't like the press conference yesterday?
Yeah.
No, maybe we. I mean, I'm not. That's more of a. It's not rhetorical. I mean, I'm not trying to get you. I'm asking the process through that thought process.
Well, I think we're going to. I think it's fine. It's healthier to see a little bit more. Again, they're 5-2. This is the point, I think, when you get to this place in the conversation where you can just say a loss is a loss, and 5-2 is not like the sky isn't falling at 5-2 or 5-3 after another game. You have an opportunity in front of you in November to rewrite the narrative about what this season is going to be. You can go 9-3. Now, a lot of people are going to laugh at that if we have this discussion next week, but you can do it. There is not another Ohio State out there on the roster, like on the schedule. USC is reeling in this moment, and that's not the upset of the decade like it would be here. Like, teams win that game in Nebraska's situation when you go to USC. And if you can do that and you can be competitive and you can win that, find a way to win that one, then you can win the last two. Like, it can happen for this team. So this a whole lot of value in waiting to see where this goes after this week. I think it's healthier than just throwing caution to the wind and saying we're going to make a change and just for the sake of making a change. Like, how much different is it actually going to look if you made a change in who was calling plays right now? Like, I don't even really think that's. Maybe I'm off base. Maybe it is on the table. Maybe Rule's sitting in his office, like, struggling with this decision right now. Maybe he says, well, I brought in Coach Thomas in the offseason in case we got to a place like this, or in part in case we got to a place like this where I felt that something needed to be done. So there's a big decision here. I don't know if he's having that struggle with himself. I would guess no, and that's something for a later time.
I don't know. I think he's going to look at this as an opportunity to enhance the culture, right? Because there's this thing about the process versus the outcome. So he's going to double check the process and pit it against the outcome, and then I think whatever that decision is. But let me ask you something, Mitch, because you talked about healthy kind of thought processes and dialoguing. Do you think we would admit out loud that we should have been okay? I remember having this discussion. It might have been with you. It was one of you guys, where I said we didn't like 4 of 7 passing attempts in the third quarter. We didn't like 10 carries for 51 yards in the third quarter. We didn't like the fact we had the ball for 9 minutes and 43 seconds in the third quarter a few weeks ago because we didn't score any points. Would we be honest enough to go back to then and say, okay, yeah, I'll take that. I didn't like the way it looked, but in lieu of what I saw last week, I much rather would have had that, because that had remnants of what we're clamoring for and longing after Saturday. Like, at the end of the day, man, sometimes we just got to get out of our own feelings in terms of the results and just look at what's actually happening. Because when I was saying that, I felt like I was having a meltdown on air. And I didn't want to be right. I'm just saying this is what we asked for. You asked for 10 for 51. You asked for 4 of 7 passing. They didn't turn the ball over, and we're mad because they didn't score. Like,
you're talking about Colorado. Are those the numbers from Colorado third quarter?
Yeah.
Well,
and what
seems like a long time ago, doesn't it?
Right, but what did we defend in the press conference? And this is where I go back to kind of being like, don't defend it, because what did the coaches say after that? And then we heard it again after Northern Iowa, even though we held them under their rushing average, and we heard it again after Illinois. And Illinois had a third quarter like that too, because we forgot that it was 17-7 at one point with a chance to take a 17-point lead. Yeah. And that wasn't good enough. But what people will tell you is we saw it coming. What I would hope was we would be able to take some remnants of the style that they wanted to play and apply it for situations like what we saw Saturday. Like, I felt like we compromised pouring the concrete for a little bit quicker fix. So part of that's on the staff, but some of it is I'm not sure we know what we want when we're upset about things.
Irrational. There's a measure of.
I guess I'm asking for help processing that. I don't want to be validated if I'm right or wrong, but do you see that at least?
I think there's a measure of like fans being irrational in the moment, and you talked about the caller, Nate, and some overreacting, and we're certainly seeing symptoms of that from fans. But it's hard to sit here and say, oh, I think fans like by and large overreacted.
Yeah, because I'm not talking about the. No. I don't want. That's okay. Like I'm talking about us in the media, and I certainly don't. And I certainly, I want to just say to the staff, whatever you want to be, go be that. Who cares what we say? Because
for sure,
that's really what I want. Because I watch other teams just do what they do, however they do it. Fleck wins, right? Fickles can win. Monken can win. I don't care what it looks like, but just have some conviction.
I don't think that they're calling games as a reaction to what we're saying, to what criticism may have come from the media after Colorado or Northern Iowa. I don't think that they're feeling pressure or reacting to pressure from media commentary. If that's what we're getting at. I think it's more their own analysis, and maybe they're coming to some of the same conclusions within the staff that they should have done a better job of finding a way to put those games further out of reach. Colorado was fine. It kind of leaves a poor taste in your mouth when you score 28 in the first half and none in the second. But as you said, you'll take that 7 days out of 7 at this point right now, that scenario, knowing what you know now about the way this last week went. So that's fine. Absolutely. Hindsight, it looks great what happened against Colorado in the second half, in the third quarter, those numbers that you recited. But there's a different level, I think, of needing to commit to the run or needing the way you use the run game in a game against Indiana, even in the first half when it started with a touchdown drive for the Hoosiers, than in any scenario that involves Nebraska being up 28-0 and how to play the second half against CU.
Mitch, have we not talked enough about the defense this week? Because it seems like we've maybe forgotten that Indiana put up 56 points, and I know it could have been a different number.
We liked his press conference better.
Apparently, we just like the guy better too, which I understand, and he's got a really good track record, so I get that. But it's not like the defense looked any bit better than the offense did on Saturday.
No, it was a rough day. It was a rough day all around, but the defense was, it was really bad, just the ability to get off the field. There's only so much time and space to talk about stuff, I guess. And I think we should be talking about the defense. But do I put it over the offense is probably more juicy at this point. And that's just part of it. It's like this is the way football is, but
like juice.
Yeah. Right. We talk about the juicy stuff and
one thing.
Yes. The defense deserves our attention and skepticism, just like the offense does.
And my buddy, Severe made fun of me for this last night. He was like, "Oh, Mr. Solutions." Last night on Big Red Wrap Up. So, in fear of sounding like that again, I do like the fact that Coach Sat said, "You know what? When we got to figure out how to run the ball with the personnel that we have and how we can get to the looks we want with the personnel we have." That's one nugget. I'm like, yep, because that will give you, if we can get that figured out, that will make the run blocking look different when you can control the number of guys in the box with viable running options. And I think you can do that without putting your quarterback in harm's way. That's okay that he wants to think about that, because I think that's the right track, personally.
Do you think that they took for granted some stuff in the run game this year? I recall some comments from Satterfield before the season, in answering questions about the balance on offense. And
I think they felt like they could manipulate the box enough to dictate the free defender, free runner. Like I do think that. So if that's your, like, that would be my answer in terms of, I take back the yes to taking it for granted, because I think what I think happened is we went all in on the style of quarterback play versus this is what we want to be on offense with a good quarterback.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Sure. I like some of the comments from before the season about the run game are sticking in my head this week as we hear from Marcus Satterfield talking about his need to commit more to the run. And I recall him saying the run, it's paraphrasing him, but the run is going to be there as they're working on passing schemes and fitting Dylan and the new receivers and all of these pieces that didn't exist last year into the offense. I think they thought, like, okay, the constant, like what we can take forward from last year is that we have this system where we know we can run the ball. We can scheme our way into being able to run the football. And I'm wondering if that was a mistake, if they should have focused more on the stuff they're talking about now back in August.
Yeah.
Mitch, do you think they underestimated how much removing the quarterback run element would impact that ability? Because if I'm looking for something where I'm like, hey, if they thought this was going to be a constant and it's obviously hasn't been, what's the change here? And the thing that you point to is, there's no more QB run.
Yeah, it's not like they have a bunch of new backs or a bunch of different backs. I mean, if anything, their stable of running backs is stronger this year than a year ago. You add Dante Dowdell, and Ramirez healthy, Gabe Irvin not contributing a lot, but he's healthy. The big difference is that they don't have the QB run threat. And if you were just looking at last year as you started to put this offense together this year, and you said, all right, what do we have established? Where's our base? What do we start with? We can run the ball. That was probably a misnomer, because you're taking out Heinrich Harburg from the picture and his ability to run from the QB position, which of course opens some things up for the backs. So absolutely. And then it leads me to the question of, okay, how do you incorporate him more? Like, bring him back into this. Dylan's the starting quarterback, of course, but how many ways can you find to take? If you can't just take the weight off of Raiola's shoulders and prevent a situation where he's got to drop back 44 times in a game, what can you do with Harburg to bring him into situations that don't compromise Dylan, but that can also help you run the ball and get yardage and keep the defense guessing in new ways. And I feel like some of that has to involve Heinrich in these last 5 games. A lot of it does.
That's Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch, we appreciate the time. As always, we'll talk again soon.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Take care.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. That's CB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. Before we get to Bet on It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook, let's get to Mike in KC. He wants to talk a little play calling. Mike, what's going on?
Good morning, Damon. This is Mike in Kansas City.
How you been?
How are you?
I'm good.
Oh, just battling a little health issue here and there, but getting better.
Oh, wishing you the best, man. Tell me something profound. What do we got?
Well, you talk about processing, and I guess as soon as the game was over, when Matt Rule got up to speak, and I like Matt because he's very self-aware.
Yeah,
okay?
I want to start there. I that is 100% the first thing that I like about him. Flaws and all, right? Like, yeah, I love it.
Yes.
I love that.
The fact that he's self-aware is, and especially in our society today, you don't see that very much. But his comments initially, right after the game, raised a red flag for me.
Mm-hmm.
In that he said, well, we didn't run the ball very well. Well, the point is, the first 7 out of 8 plays that Satterfield called, we threw the ball. And as soon as we did that, I knew that we were in trouble. I mean, we the idea that we want to run the ball but then you come up or on first down, we'd run the ball for 7 or 8 yards. Then he throws the ball on second and third down. This isn't the NFL. I mean, the mindset that we're carrying into the football game is we aren't willing to line up and say, can we beat you one-on-one? We're going to run the ball at you, and we're going to see if you can play big man football. And Rule said that from the day he got to Nebraska. I'm a Penn State guy. I'm a Rutgers, I'm coming. We're going to line up and hit. The offense does not resemble that. There's a huge disconnect for what Rule's saying and where Satterfield's at and what's coming to get. That's my thought. And it made me so frustrated when I heard that. It's like, what is going on? That didn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
So, Mike,
get your thought.
Okay, that's cool. I was going to process through it. I appreciate the call, Mike, and I'm wishing you all the best. I hope
hey,
praying you're feeling better.
So good to talk to you, Damon.
You too. Thank you. I'm telling you, this is what I think this is. I've said this all day today, but I'm with Mike here. I prefaced it with what we talked about in the summer, getting better around him. I talked about it the last 3 weeks with self-control. Even though you've got a great toy to play with, it's not ready for extended use. Okay? He's got to play with him, put it back, play with it, put it back, play with it, put it back. Meanwhile, it's like it's Toy Story, right? But all the other little toys around are what kind of makes Woody. And for Dylan, it takes self-control as a coordinator and as a head coach to not be enamored because it was so much, quote unquote, better than what you had a year ago. And I don't know. These are the parts of where, like Nate's call, that don't bother me, right? Because I know what he's saying. He didn't say it how I would say it, but you can love somebody's talents and not be nurturing them a great deal, where if you keep this up, you're not going to get your return on investment. He said it differently. That was my takeaway from what he said about Raiola. He's not calling him a bust. He's a really good talent, but you can't use him like this. So
I agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I think that's what he was saying.
I think you're giving him a lot of benefit of the doubt, but I agree with you, so we can keep going.
Okay. So when you're backed up against the goal line and you get the first negative run play. It wasn't negative. It was for like 2.5 yards.
Yeah.
Right? Conventional wisdom says, I got to put the ball in the hands of my best player. It doesn't say, all right,
do it again.
How does this work with who we want to be? As long as you have that serving of the two masters mindset, you're going to get sporadic play calling.
So that's why I agree with Mike. There's a disconnect for sure.
There's a total disconnect.
100%.
So what I think, and Nebraska may have their hand forced for multiple reasons. Number one, there are some plays to be made in the run game against Ohio State. I've been saying this since the season started. Something is different between Knowles and Larry Johnson Sr. and getting pressure on the quarterback and how they're playing defense. I watch them every week. I've talked about this for 8-9 weeks.
Ad nauseum. Yeah.
Okay. And so if I'm Nebraska, I want to, what can we do that helps us attack this? Not even falling in love with the Denzel Burke thing, right? Because he's not playing very well, and everybody's picking on Burke, right? That doesn't mean if I'm Nebraska, I need a little self-control. I know Burke has kind of been who everybody's picked on. It looks like this, but let's start with
what we're good at, what we want to be.
What do we want to be? Let's call it that way, and let's help out our quarterback. He's young. I don't want to run through him like I was gonna say the new girlfriend, but that doesn't sound right. I don't want to just like use it up and not keep it in good shape. You want to keep it in good shape as long as possible. I don't think he feels well. That's number two. So if he's not fully healthy and you want to still run the ball, you have every opportunity given your opponent to do those things. You talked about yesterday needing some concepts with your personnel groupings to help you achieve your desired outcome. Do that. That it will help you
100%,
and you can build on it going forward. But I get the disconnect is the biggest thing that I think critics are frustrated by, because we hear one thing and we see another, and until that gets reconciled, we'll bring up any and everything we can as an illustration on why this can't work. The Cosgrove thing, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous because we haven't even given it an opportunity. And if you think somebody else was going to be better last year, I don't know what to tell you. If you want to critique this year, I'm all in. Like it's not pleasing. I don't like it.
I've got questions.
It's
about
not good.
Identity. I've got questions about.
But don't put that on him yet, because we don't know.
Sure. So here's the thing that I'm betting on, though. And this is a philosophical issue I've got here, because I think just about everything you said was right, and I'm still not sure. And this is a fan problem. This is an us problem, right? I'm still not sure we'd be happy, because here's the thing.
I'm not. I can't control that.
I can't either. But I'm just. But we are talking with a lot of fans and people that are consuming the product.
Okay.
So here's what I'm saying, because we hear a lot of, well, we don't like this, and we don't like this, and there's a disconnect, and a lot of those things can be true, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing that's also true that you keep bringing up is everything looked about the way you would want it to in the third quarter against Colorado, and we still weren't happy because
I picked one quarter out of each. I picked Northern Iowa and I picked Illinois.
Yeah,
I'm not going to harp on that point.
Right, but here's my point. Right,
I read the stats.
It can look
from those three games.
100%. It can look exactly like we think we want it to look, but regardless of how much we say it, as a fan base, we're outcome-oriented, not process-oriented. We want our coaching staff to be process-oriented, not outcome-oriented.
Don't listen to the people that think you have to be one or the other.
Right, because your process needs to lead to correct outcomes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a bad process.
Right.
Right? Long-term.
You hear people that haven't really applied it.
Binary, black or white.
It's not.
Right?
It's not binary.
No. You start with one versus the other. I understand that. You start with process, and if you trust that process is a good process, it leads to good outcomes. But if you've got a process that consistently
they both
have to work
behavior.
together.
Yeah, they both dictate behavior.
If you have a process that doesn't consistently lead to good outcomes, eventually you have to examine the process, right? Mm-hmm. But here's my point: is if I don't think we should be at the point yet, if we liked the process, that we should worry about the outcomes yet. But I think if every quarter looked like the ones you're talking about, and we're still having the point outcomes that we're getting,
where we weren't scoring, you mean?
We still wouldn't be happy.
Yeah.
So that's the disconnect as a fan base for me. Is there a disconnect on the coaching staff? 100%. But I think there's a disconnect on the fan base too, because
I do know, and I was frustrated when I kept repeating it, and I would try to find different ways to not get my emotions involved. But when I'm reading stats from different quarters and I say, hey, that's what we wanted, right?
100%.
That's what we wanted, right? That's what we want, right? I get it. It's not generating points. People are like, well, there's no all I was trying to say is, yeah, I want to score points.
Everybody does.
But you better establish who you want to be for the long haul. Because then what I heard the last couple of times is responses from the staff through the media about what was being narrated. I'm like, don't fall for that.
And I appreciate
Don't fall for that.
I appreciate the call from Mike, but if we are in second and short consistently or third and short consistently and we never take a shot with Raiola, we're going to hear the same thing. Why aren't you using the quarterback?
I don't know.
I think that's true. That's Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sports. But make sure you get out Saturday, last $10,000 giveaway of the month here in Omaha, and you can win $500 in free slot play every half hour. We'll wrap up the show coming up next. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla, reminding you to get out to unionomaha.com to get your tickets for this weekend's final home match of the season. That is at Warner Park, 4 p.m. on Saturday, and it's Fan Appreciation Day. Make sure you get out to unionomaha.com to get your tickets. DB.
Yo.
I would like to talk about something that's not Nebraska football. Is that okay? Do I have permission? Is that all right?
Fudge. Yeah.
I would like to talk a little NFL.
Yeah.
I like the NFL.
Glad it wasn't Bronny and LeBron.
The NFL's fun. No, I know that was a nice moment for you. I didn't want you to get emotional on air.
It wasn't.
It's just, you seemed like you were just like really in your feels about that. So I didn't want to. I didn't want to have to. I don't want you to choke up on the air, DB. I know that it means so much to you. and I didn't want to put you in that spot. I don't want to put you in a bad spot as a friend, as a co-host.
Yeah, you're fine. You're an idiot.
I know. The NFL's been good though. I wanted to talk a little NFL.
The NFL's been great.
This is
Are you still mad about Nate Mahomes' comment?
I mean, I think he's wrong. That's fine.
Well,
like mad and wrong aren't always the same.
Like it.
I did want to talk about though. So one of the things that I had written down, and this was before they acquired DeAndre Hopkins, was that I still think the Chiefs are scarier than ever.
I do not.
I'm terrified of them.
I mean, I get it. Like,
the defense is that good.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
And Patrick Mahomes is still good all the times he needs to be. Plus, you give him a weapon back, I don't feel great.
Yeah.
If I'm the rest of the league, I do not feel good.
I think the league's got to think law of averages. At some point, this guy isn't going to rise to the occasion. Now, whether I think that's true or not, and this is where the disconnect is with people, I don't have to believe what the general consensus is, but I can acknowledge why they believe it. So Baltimore baby saying, man, we just got to stay on our game. Defense keep improving. We're going to be explosive on offense. All of a sudden, Mark Andrews is back. We're going to figure out how to use Likely. We're Zay Flowers or, the Steelers and West.
Baltimore's an interesting example, actually.
So, and
because it works the opposite for them too.
Because conventional wisdom would say, Baltimore, why do you think that? Well, all you do is choke in the playoffs.
Well, I was going to say Lamar's going to choke in the playoffs.
Lamar doesn't play well in the playoffs.
But internally, they don't think that.
Yeah,
but you can understand why the consensus does.
Yeah, I can understand why people would say that.
Yeah.
Right, that's why you tried to talk me off Baltimore when the Chiefs were undefeated.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, you know what? I realized they got the great equalizer. Patrick Mahomes. He's going to make a play when he has to. He's going to break your back, whatever. But I'm banking on it returning.
That both are going to return to the mean.
Yeah.
Lamar's going to not be as bad as he's going to look more like regular season Lamar than postseason Lamar at some point.
And at some point,
that Patrick Mahomes
just isn't going to make a play.
Or somebody else won't. That's the bigger question, right? Because, especially last year, Mahomes would make plays, guys would drop it, whatever. Like, at some point, somebody else isn't going to make the play.
It's like, go back and look and see when they had that scramble that everybody rewound against the Niners. Less of a time, but more of a time, he would be the one to make that play. Of all the things that were going on in the momentum swing in that game, given how he was kind of however he was moving around, do you think he was going to rip off a double-digit yarder and then turn around a couple plays later and truck a guy? I mean, like,
the trucking the guy was honestly more shocking to me than the scramble. The scramble is a thing that happens to the 49ers, especially every time they play. I think it's because of how they play defense, but it happens to a lot of people that play Mahomes.
I'll say it like this. The Hopkins thing doesn't change what I already thought about the Chiefs.
Fair.
It doesn't.
Let me see what you think about some of these other teams to the opposite direction, because we're about the point of the season, not quite halfway there, where I'm ready to start writing some teams off completely. Okay? I think some of these are real easy. Some of them a little more challenging.
Okay.
Dolphins, Patriots. Gone, right? Are you not out on the Dolphins yet because of the division?
I'm not out on the Dolphins.
Okay, I am because I am. But Jets.
I'm out.
Out on the Jets. More out on the Jets than the Dolphins?
Yes.
Okay, I like that. That's spicy. Bengals and Browns.
I'm banking on culture there.
On for Jets.
Dolphins versus
Jets versus.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll buy that.
Yeah.
Because that Jets seem like a dumpster fire.
Yeah, I'm banking. I'm riding with culture there.
Browns, I assume, out.
Out.
Bengals. Bengals are tough.
I know because.
But you got two teams that are a lot better than them in front of. Well, not a lot better, but they're ahead of them and better in the division.
Amazing. Daniel and I had a conversation. We were texting late one night. I think it was Sunday. He's like, man, Lamar Jackson's a guy that I wish he wasn't a Raven because I cheer for him. I'm like, yeah.
Lamar Jackson's fun to watch.
I love, and I'm always defending him.
Yeah.
But I said, for me, it's Jamar Chase. I hate the Bengals.
You want him on any other team?
I love the way he plays.
Yeah.
He's competitive. He's a dog. He's in your like.
I'm glad Joe Burrow doesn't play for a team I hate because I really like Joe Burrow.
I'm a Burrow guy.
Yeah.
Burrow. I'm out on the Bengals.
All right, we're writing off the Bengals. Jaguars, Titans.
Out.
Both out. Raiders.
Out.
Okay. This is where it starts getting a little tricky, I think. I don't think it's too hard. Giants.
Out.
Cowboys.
I'll mess around and beat the Steelers this week, but
Cowboys.
Out.
Out on the Cowboys. Saints and Panthers?
Out.
All right. Rams?
In
on the Rams.
In.
Okay, because the division's not scary?
Good culture, and they're eventually going to get healthy.
Cardinals.
They're tough.
That's a tough one. I told you, this NFC West, I think, is the hardest one. The Cardinals are tough. I don't totally know what to do with them.
I'm certainly not out, so if I have to just pick one,
so if we're not writing them off, you're in.
I'm in.
Yeah, we're not saying, hey, going to the playoffs or whatever, just not writing them off yet.
I'm in.
Okay. So here's the last one, 49ers. Because to me, health plays a huge situation here. Because there's some guys that aren't going to get healthy. That, like this year, they're not coming back. That I think makes this 49ers really difficult. And I don't know.
I'm in.
You're in on the 49ers still. You think McCaffrey comes back?
I'm in.
Or is it a culture thing?
Culture.
Yeah. You just trust what they do.
And they're good with development. Somebody will step up.
Yeah, we've seen that historically.
Yeah, I'm in.
You know what's funny about so I'm watching the 49ers game with a buddy on Sunday. And like I'm a big 49ers fan. Not the way I am with, I'm not as dialed in on the 49ers as I am some of the teams we talk about all the time, right? But pretty dialed in on the 49ers. There's guys going out there as wide receivers that I'm like, I've heard that name before. Probably couldn't tell you a whole lot about this guy.
Yeah, but so you know why you should be encouraged, and this is weird.
Why is that?
How many? But when the game was over for the Chiefs on Sunday, how many of those receivers were you naming?
Oh, not a lot.
How about their running back?
Yeah, no.
Exactly. You know what they did?
They won.
And they ran it down the Niners' throat.
Yeah.
So if you like your team's run game.
Yeah. I like their run concepts for sure.
Then at some point, I don't know. I would be encouraged.
So here's part of the reason I'm discouraged a little bit. Well, I mean, losing Brandon Ayuk for the year sucks. Like, that's tough.
Yeah.
I'm more. Go ahead.
They can morph.
Yes.
Well, like we saw the team that they played.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm more skeptical on McCaffrey coming back than a lot of people are.
Yeah, but what if you don't need a McCaffrey?
So
what if you need a Garendo?
That's where I disagree, because if you want to go back,
Chiefs didn't need a Pacheco.
Chiefs are better than the 49ers. They are.
Okay.
Andy Reid's a better coach than Kyle Shanahan. Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback than Brock Purdy, and I think the Chiefs defense is better than the 49ers. Chiefs are just better than the 49ers. I think across the board.
They aren't 170 or whatever they rush for.
No, they're not. They're not that much better, but I think just across the board, the reason I can have faith in the way it looks for the Chiefs and not the 49ers is the Chiefs are just better.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that at all.
Here's the thing that concerns me about the 49ers the most is you go back 2 years ago.
Why didn't you ask me about the Steelers if I'm in or out?
Well, I mean, I can ask you, but I'm in, so
Yeah, I'm in.
I would say I don't think there's a question there, especially after you see Russell Wilson play well. Now, I get, opponent dependent, whatever. You don't know if you're going to get consistency, but they can win with either quarterback now, and I think that's a game changer for them. Like being able to win with either guy in different ways. That, to me, is a game changer.
Yeah, I think not having as low a floor.
Yes, because I thought the floor with those guys could be really low.
Yeah, I mean, Fields is a lower floor, higher ceiling guy. Can they win middle of the? Because I don't think Russ is going to cook like that every week.
Probably not, but George Pickens might.
And they're going to get vertical in the passing game. Like, I'll take that.
100%. But the going back a couple years,
even with a guy that looks like he has a noodle arm now. Sometimes you just got to show it.
Yeah, I know.
Sometimes you just got to show it.
Who are you talking to? You still talking to Steelers, or is just still talking about other people, maybe a little closer to home?
No.
Talking about what are we talking about here, DB?
Really? I told myself I'm not letting emotions. I'm staying right here.
So here's the reason I'm concerned about the 49ers, specifically with McCaffrey and not being able to do it with other guys. I know what it looked like before they acquired McCaffrey. It looked a lot different.
Yeah, you're a fan though.
I am a fan, but
so
it looked but it looked a lot different offensively with versus without McCaffrey.
Listen, if Green Bay can win
with Malik Willis,
yes, you got a chance.
Listen, Matt LaFleur's a good coach too.
You got a chance.
He's a real good coach.
As long as it doesn't count.
What does that mean? As long as it doesn't count.
He's been a little different in on the largest of stages, but I don't really hold that against him like some others. It's hard to get there.
It is really hard to get there. I hold some of it against him a little bit. There's more of a track record now. It's harder to listen. I gave him a pass on Atlanta because he wasn't the head coach, but there's it's starting to pile up a little bit on me here with my guy Kyle Shanahan.
Mahomes.
I'm not trading him for anybody. I mean,
Mahomes is the new Brady, right?
He is.
You just don't want that guy to have the ball.
100%.
He could be throwing to me. Well, he could be throwing to you, and you're probably fearful of Brady. Like,
only because I got that game day men's health running through my veins now. Woo!
It ain't make you fast. It actually probably slowed you down a little bit.
Some of the other treatments they have might. That's DP. I'm Ravi Lulla here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a good rest of your day.